Hi there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Whole Home Show. I'm Tony Joe, your host here every week. We bring you tips, education, and updates on everything having to do with your home. Whether you're in the real estate market or if you're looking for decorating or improvement ideas, this is a great place to be. Our show comes to you with the support of our show partners, Denise Webster, mortgage broker with Dominion Lending Center's Modern Mortgage Group, JP Sellers, insurance advisor at Westland Insurance. The Sitka Law Group for your real estate, wills and estates, corporate and personal injury needs, and Silhouette Building Inspections with Pierre Beauvais. If you need help or direction in your real estate transaction, give any of the Whole Home Show team members a call. They would love to hear from you. It's been my pleasure to be here. I can't even speak today. It's been my pleasure being your host here every week for the last 7 years here on CFAX 1070. This is not my day job, though. I help people with their real estate needs. I've been doing so since 1991, 35 years now. My anniversary is coming up in just a matter of days. It's been my privilege having my hands in hundreds and hundreds of files here in Greater Victoria. Pleased to be ranked as one of the top 100 agents at Remax in Western Canada. I'd be happy and pleased to help you as well too. If you need some help or direction from myself or any of the Whole Home Show team members, you can find our contact information by visiting cfax1070.com. When you look under shows, there you'll find us, the Whole Home Show with me, Tony Joe. All of our contact information is there, or as I always say, just reach out to me. Google me or look me up, the Prime Real Estate Team, primeteam.ca. I love hearing from our loyal CFAX listeners every week. I'm going to be telling you all about our upcoming webinar for home buying. It's navigating the home buying process here in Greater Victoria. I'll get there in just a moment, but I do want to first tell you about who our guest is on the program today. I am so excited, as I always am when he's here. It is a privilege to have the chief economist of the British Columbia Real Estate Association, Brendon Ogmundson. He will be here with us just after our first break here. If you're curious to know what happened in 2025, what the numbers are looking for 2026, I tend to have conversations with him about the labor force, and we were talking about tariffs last time and all of that. So much great information that he's going to share with us. So looking forward to that. However, the webinar, and this is an invitation to you, anyone you know, anyone who you can think of that could use some help or direction in buying a home here in Greater Victoria. And I'm not just talking, by the way, first-time home buyers. This could be somebody who hasn't bought in a while. There's been a lot of changes in regulation and how to buy a home and mortgaging and legal things, all of that stuff. This is going to happen on Saturday, January 31st. It's happening by Zoom, by the way, so you don't even need to leave the comfort of your own home. It is a Zoom webinar between 2 o'clock and 3:30. Again, it's Saturday, January 31st. Write it down, put it in your schedule. Maybe you're grabbing a pen and paper right now. I'm going to repeat this in just a couple of moments. In the session here, you're going to gain valuable insight into the process of buying a home. We're going to talk about market timing, home selection, the offer process, mortgage pre-qualification, legal aspects, home insurance, and building inspections. Because we all know buying a home can be a stressful process. So, what kind of property should you buy? Can you qualify for a mortgage? What are pitfalls to avoid? Who better to hear this from than your friends here at the Whole Home Show? So the speakers and presenters will be myself, obviously talking about real estate matters. Denise Webster, of course, from Dominion Lending Center's Modern Mortgage Group, our intrepid mortgage broker. Gurpreet Randhawa, she is a principal at the Sitka Law Group. JP Sellers from Westland Insurance. And of course, Pierre Beauvais, he's a home inspector with Silhouette Building Inspections. So you're going to not only gain and gather a lot of information about the process, but you're going to be able to ask questions as well too. We're going to have a Q&A session. Come with your questions. We will answer them. How to register? Well, we have the information on our CFAX 1070 page, cfax1070 dot com. And of course, what you got to do is look for shows. You look for the Whole Home Show with me, Tony Joe. There's a link right there, or you can go to Eventbrite. Eventbrite, just look January 31st. in Victoria. You're going to find us there. Finally, you can go to my website, the Prime Real Estate Team. It's primeteam.ca/events. Primeteam.ca/events. There's information there and anything you need, or you can always just reach out to me as well too, which people often do. We'd love to see you there. By the way, this will not be recorded, folks. We are not recording the session here. If you want to participate or gather this information, you've got to be there. So, might we have another one in the near future? Perhaps, or maybe even one in person. If you like that, by the way, let us know. We'd be happy to do so. Before we get Brendon on our program here, something that we always like to do is just bring up timely matters or things about real estate here locally in Greater Victoria. Here we are. This is we're getting close to the middle of January 2025 here. Sorry. Oh my goodness. 2026. Sorry, 2026. And of course, one of the things that is always in the news the first week of January is assessments. The British Columbia Assessment Authority has delivered to you already your property assessment for this year. I always like having a little review about this here to remind you about what assessments are all about. This topic is it means a lot to me because actually the first episode we ever did here at the Whole Home Show 7 or so years ago was about assessments and what it means to you. And of course, we had my friend Amanda Mills, who is a now retired appraiser. We, of course, talked mortgages with Denise Webster, and also had Peter, who was the author of a book about appealing your property tax assessment, which is still out there, by the way. Peter Morris, look that up. What does your assessment mean, by the way, folks? Well, it actually, let's just cut to the chase. It means nothing. It means nothing. It doesn't mean what your house is going to sell for. It doesn't mean what it's worth. The assessment really is just a figure, a rough number that your municipality is going to use by applying the mill rate. You know that it's a calculation, a method of calculation, in order to determine your share of the provincial budget. Because of course, not provincial, a municipal budget. Your municipality has expenses. There's costs for infrastructure, perhaps for policing, parks, all of these things. There is a cost that the municipality has. They need to figure out every year what their budget is. Do they need to spend more money? Do they need to put money aside for major projects? And then what they do is they figure out your share by applying your property assessment to a mill rate. And that's how they figure out what your share of taxes is. That's all the assessment is, folks. It is not, and let's just make this very clear. It is not a reflection of what your property is going to sell for. And you know how I know? I know because I look at numbers every day and properties sometimes sell for more, sometimes sell for less. I'm often asked if there's a formula that can be applied from assessed value to what properties are worth. And the answer is no. And the biggest variable as to why is because sellers will sell for what they want to sell for and buyers will pay what they want to pay. And sometimes those numbers, first of all, those numbers sometimes do not mix, which is the reason why not every deal comes together. Sometimes people cannot get together in price. And finally, rarely ever does that number have anything to do with assessment value. We will be asking Brendon when he gets on the program here shortly about what I know he's been talking about it because every year, the first month of the year, as the chief economist of British Columbia Real Estate Association, he's asked by the media about that question. So we'll hear what he has to say. But the bottom line is, folks, it means nothing. Is that clear? The assessed value means nothing. All it is just a formula that your municipality is going to use to figure out what your share of property taxes is. Anyways, you need to take a break here. When we come back, we'll be talking economics with the chief economist of the British Columbia Real Estate Association. Back in just a moment. Thanks for coming back. You're listening to the Whole Home Show, and I'm Tony Joe. At the beginning of any year, we always kind of wonder what has happened, what happened the year prior, what happened in 2025. What can we look forward to in days ahead here? And of course, one of the ways that we do that is we look at numbers. We look at specs, sales, average prices, all of these things. But what does this all mean? You can look at numbers, and of course, people have their ways of translating. And sometimes, you look at numbers and you think about it based on your own, maybe current situation or current needs. But we do need the people who actually do this for a living, the ones who review this information, economists, if you will. And who better to have on our program today? A regular guest. We have him here often, and it is a big privilege. He is the chief economist of the British Columbia Real Estate Association. Is Brendon Ogmundson. Brendon, Happy New Year, and thanks for coming back here.
Happy New Year. Always happy to join the show.
For our listeners here, just as a reminder, what is BCREA? The British Columbia Real Estate Association is an organization that consists of the 8 real estate boards in British Columbia. Victoria, of course, is one of them. There's other boards as well, like Vancouver, Interior Realtors, Powell River, Chilliwack, Fraser Valley. I'm missing something here. And there's 8 of
Probably.
them. Yes. And I can't remember the number now, Brendon. We're probably looking,
Yeah.
it's like 20 something thousand agents,
It's
right?
like 25, 26,000. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, folks, how does this benefit you as a consumer? And you're probably curious, what is BCREA? What does this mean? Well, BCREA does a number of things. First of all, they provide education for realtors out there in the province of BC. They do advocacy out there, government with policy and politics and things like that. And of course, the other thing is economics and doing a review of what's happened out there. Uh, I know you've been busy, Brendan, because we talked about this before I hit the start button here today. Always a busy time for you, right? Beginning of the year.
Yeah. It kind of the end of the year is busy. I got a couple of weeks off, and then it starts right up as soon as I get back to work. I think I've got 20 speaking engagements lined up and media and everything else. So, it's good. It's good that my services are wanted, but yeah, we're started the year running for sure.
Yeah, well, actually, I should say your services are needed because, as I said in my lead in here, that the thing about data is that, people read things in whatever way kind of affects them at the time. But I think it's really important that BCREA has someone like you who's able to translate this. And this is what we're talking about today. So let's start with 2025. How did it end up? What are you telling people?
Yeah, 2025 was not a great year. We were very optimistic at the end of 2024 about 2025 because we had finished 2024 on a real high note. Sales were picking up all over the province. January was pretty good, 2025, and then all of the tariff kind of nonsense started, and that kicked off sort of like a historic amount of uncertainty and fears about, not even just fears about whether there was going to be a recession, but the time was like, well, how bad is this recession going to be? It was sort of a foregone conclusion. Thankfully, we avoided all those worst case scenarios, but it's still that uncertainty lingered, and that meant that sales, especially in bigger markets, were some of the weakest we've seen, well, in like 25 years. The
Mhm.
Vancouver market had its weakest year in 25 years. Overall, for the province, we had our weakest year since 2008. The island was okay. Like the Vancouver Island boards outside of Victoria had an okay year. Victoria was, I think, about 10 or 15% below its 10-year average, but I think was up year over year for sales. So
A
it was
tiny, tiny bit, like
tiny,
0.38% or
tiny.
something. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Prices though in Victoria were up like 4%. So like it was an interesting year. Especially the back half of the year, we saw a real divergence in recoveries. Like a lot of markets outside the Lower Mainland are starting to get back to normal, while the Lower Mainland still really kind of struggles to get sales to pick up.
That seems to be the biggest story now because the headlines that we're reading in the news are the Toronto and the Vancouver markets and
Yeah.
how the outlook and the forecast for those is kind of bleak, right?
Yeah, it's really interesting though. I kind of talk about this when I do some speaking. A lot of the times the media, especially national media, will talk about the Toronto condo market and how bad it is, and then they'll just have like a comma and Vancouver without really
Yes.
looking at the data. So like since 2022, the peak for Toronto, condos in Toronto are down. Prices are down 20% or so. And in Vancouver, since 2022, they're down like 2 or 3%. They're down a bit more if you the actual peak for Vancouver is like 2024. From that peak, they're down like 3 or 4%, but very, very different markets in between Vancouver and Toronto. Much, much worse in Toronto. Prices have been really resilient. I mean, we're talking about the worst sales in 25 years, and prices in Vancouver, I think for the year, were down 4%.
Hmm. And this is interesting because sometimes when people read sales are down, surely it must mean that prices will start dropping, the floor will open up, and then maybe everything's going to be on sale. But statistically, as you said, I mean, it was not that bad.
Hasn't been the case. Prices sellers just they don't if they don't need to sell at fire sale prices, then they're not going to, right? Like there's no reason for a lot of the especially in Vancouver or actually in a lot of markets in BC where over half the households don't have a mortgage. Like there's not a lot of urgency in a lot of those cases. They would like to sell their home for some price. If they don't get it, they tend to hold off. We haven't seen like a real like capitulation of sellers to buyers. Buyers are coming in looking at headlines of crashing condo prices and 25-year lows in sales and lowballing sellers, and the sellers are just like, no, thank you. We're fine just staying here until the next round, I guess.
And you just brought up something a moment ago, and I saw a graph, and I don't have it here with me. I can't remember where I saw it, but it was a study of households that have no mortgages, and I couldn't help but notice that particular one. It said Victoria was something like 54% of households did not have mortgages. And I think the highest, if I'm not mistaken, with a mortgage was Fort St. John or something. Um, uh,
14 tone's pretty high.
yeah.
So I actually had that right in front of me because I have a
Okay.
great, I have a great slide where
Yeah, yeah.
we're trying to look at where like the most risk is for mortgage renewals. So which areas have a lot of mortgages and where affordability is kind of poor. So yeah, Fort St. John's pretty high. It's about 71, 72% of households,
Oh,
owner households have a mortgage.
yeah.
Squamish, I think, is a bit higher. It's about 74%. And actually Langford is one of the higher ones. It's closer to 75. So on my chart,
Uh-huh.
Langford is actually the highest for share of these are 2021 census numbers. Maybe
Okay.
it's changed the last 5 years.
Yeah.
We'll find out in the next census. But yeah, Langford the highest and the lowest. Parksville only 39%
Yeah,
of a mortgage.
amazing.
Yeah,
And the reason why we bring that up is well, twofold. Number one, what you just said, if sellers can't get what they're hoping to get, they
yeah,
don't need to sell. So that's the
no,
first thing.
exactly.
And the second one, and we'll get to this maybe after the break as well too, is interest rates because people are always hanging on to what's happening with interest rates, and if rates don't drop, then people will be in trouble or whatever. But here we are, and again, a lot of people here in Greater Victoria, they have no mortgage, so it doesn't
Yeah,
matter.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Again, we're having a chat today, everyone, with Brendon Ogmundson. He is the chief economist at the British Columbia Real Estate Association. If you're curious, by the way, as consumers, there is a ton of information online. Just look up bcrea.bc.ca. That's bcrea.bc.ca. There's reports, there's information. There's so much that you can learn about here, and it's all real estate related because, of course, BCREA consists of 8 member boards in British Columbia here. We provide all the data from our sales and information, and that's where Brendan gets the hard facts to give reporting on. Need to take a break here, Brendan. Stay right there. We'll be back in just a moment. Thanks for coming back. You're listening to the Whole Home Show, and I'm Tony Joe. Our show comes to you every week with the support of our show partners, Denise Webster, mortgage broker with Dominion Lending Center's Modern Mortgage Group, JP Sellers, insurance advisor at Westland Insurance, the Sitka Law Group for your real estate, wills and estates, corporate and personal injury needs, and Silhouette Building Inspections with Pierre Beauvais. If you need help or direction in your real estate transaction, give any of the Whole Home Show team members a call. They would love to hear from you. As a reminder, if you're a podcast listener, you can download all 360 or so of our episodes from the past 7 years. Always lots of great information. We've had so many fantastic guests. Perhaps there are things that were not relevant to you at the moment that we recorded, but perhaps they are right now. So you can find our podcast by going to iTunes or wherever all fine podcasts can be downloaded, wherever you listen to your stuff. By the way, folks, I have been talking for the past couple of weeks. Here we are. We're almost midway through January of 2026, if you can imagine. And I do want to invite all of you to a webinar that your friends here at the Whole Home Show are putting on January 31st. That is a Saturday at 2 o'clock by Zoom. It is navigating the home buying process here in Victoria, British Columbia. And of course, your hosts and your speakers will be your team here at the Whole Home Show. Myself, Denise Webster, JP Sellez, we have Pierre Beauvais, and of course, sorry, I said Denise Webster, Gurpreet Randhawa. The four of them will be chatting about helping you enter the real estate market. Some of the information that you're going to want to know about, though, is what you're hearing about today. And this is with the chief economist from the British Columbia Real Estate Association, our guest today, Brendon Ogmundson. Again, Brendon, thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here.
The other thing that, of course, the news are going to be asking or have been asking you about because it's the first, second week of January are assessments. And that, of course, is always a piece of news. What are they asking you and what are you telling them?
Yeah, it's one of those things where like assessed values are seemingly very important to the media, not as important to the
Yes.
industry, where
Yep.
like, well, we're not really that concerned with what a house maybe have been valued at in July of last year, right? Like so they're kind of stagnant values, they're a snapshot in time. They're used to mainly calculate property tax. They're not really useful in a market situation. So it's always like some education about what assessments are and what they mean for the market. Not very much. And then to discussing the trends. It's always like, were you surprised? I always like the question, were you surprised? As if like, how would I be surprised at what happened with home prices? Like I wouldn't be doing my job very well if I was shocked at what happened with assessments.
Yes.
But yeah, not a whole lot to get excited about in the assessments, especially for the island. It was basically flat in Victoria for like every market and every product segment.
hmm Yeah, the one that I always say to people is when we have this conversation about assessments is I say, when's the last time you had an assessor physically come by and look at your house?
Right,
Be-
exactly.
because almost everyone says they never have, and as a result, how can anyone create or evaluate your home if they haven't seen it? They don't know your upgrades, they don't know the condition or all of these kind of things. It really
Yeah,
is, as you've just said, just a function of the municipalities basically needing a figure to base
yeah.
your share, my
And
share of of
and as
taxes.
always, if your assessment went down, that doesn't mean that your property tax is going down but you're or up otherwise. Like it's all about the relative change in your community and what your municipality is setting their mill rate at and what their budget is. Like the actual assessed value is like doesn't mean a whole lot. So
No.
yeah,
The other one as a realtor that I always enjoy too is when people say, "Oh, that listing that you have for sale, how come it's so much above assessed value?
yeah.
How is your seller expecting to get that?" And I laugh sometimes because sometimes I get cheeky and I go, "Oh, I got another house over here for sale and we have it listed way below assessed value. Like, why don't you go and buy that right now?" "Oh, I don't
Yeah,
want
it
that
must be a
house."
great deal. You could
Yes.
easily flip it, right? Yeah,
Exactly, exactly.
yeah,
So
yeah. That's
that's
good. That's a good
that's what
one. I have to remember that.
absolutely, absolutely. So again, we talked about numbers and what's happened in 2025. Because here we are in Victoria, majority of our listeners will be Victoria or island bound. What are your thoughts? Like, we will get a little further into the economy and tariffs. We talked about this last time you and I were together.
Yeah.
But any sort of snapshot about how you felt 2025 went for the island in general?
Yeah, I think it was not that bad a year compared to the really terrible year that some other markets had. Like it was below average basically from the jump. Like January is pretty good in Victoria and the island. And then we had most months that were 10 to 15% below the 10-year average. There's a couple of weird months where things kind of got back to normal for a month at a time.
Yeah.
Ended the year a little bit weaker than I thought we would, but generally, it was it was a disappointing year, but not as disappointing as some other markets. And I think we'll have a stronger 2026. There's some interesting things going on in Victoria with like affordability that maybe is starting to slow things down.
Hmm.
Right now, the Victoria market's neck and neck with the Fraser Valley for the second most expensive market in BC. They're both around a little over $1 million the average price.
Hmm.
Um, Seems like that affordability is starting to constrain sales activity a bit in Victoria. We did some research earlier this year on changing what we consider as a balanced market in Victoria, which was kind of really interesting because we had always just lumped it in with every other market where between a 12 and 20% sales to active listings ratio was kind of balanced.
Yes.
But Victoria turns out like a 12 to 20% is almost like a buyer's market for Victoria. Like it seems like you need to get a really, really high sales to active listings ratio to generate faster increases in prices in Victoria than any other market. It's really, really odd. It's like north of 25% sales to active listings or like less than 4 months of supply to really see prices accelerate.
Hmm.
We're trying to figure out why. Turns out I think it was there's a bunch of different factors. Like affordability was one of the big ones where it's just like, we're kind of buyers are in that market, maybe just kind of tapped out, can't bid a lot more than where prices are currently.
Hmm. Oh, and by the way, we should clarify for our listeners here the sales to active listing ratio. So we do. By the way, the Victoria Real Estate Board does provide this stat. There is in fact a graph that talks about this, and this is where it is the active listings are compared to the number of sales that occur in a given month, right?
Yeah, it's just a measure of like how tight market conditions are.
Yeah.
Often you'll hear it quoted as a months of inventory, like at the current pace of sales, how many months of inventory on the market. The lower that number,
Mhm.
the tighter market conditions get, the faster home prices might rise. So, yeah, it's a really good indicator of the direction of prices. It tends to forecast prices really well.
With the last couple of minutes we have here on this segment, we should talk about vacancy a bit as well, because something that Victorians will be seeing around here, driving around a lot, there's a lot more purpose-built apartment buildings,
Yeah.
and so we have more inventory for rent here now than we've had in decades.
Yeah, the CMHC report came out. Was it above 3% vacancy rate in Victoria for
The
the first
highest in
time?
25 years or something, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
similar story in Vancouver and similar reasons. We didn't build any purpose-built rental for, I don't know, from like 1985 to like 2015 or something.
Yeah.
We just basically stopped building purpose-built rental and then really started building purpose-built rental in the back half of the 2010s. And over the past few years, it's been the only thing that makes any economic sense. You can get a 50-year very low rate loan from the CMHC to build purpose-built rental, and you can do that instead of trying to pre-sell a condo project and go through that difficulty. A lot of projects are just going the purpose-built rental route because it's the only they can really get financed.
Hmm.
So as a result, we're going to have like over the next couple of years more completions of purpose-built rental than we've seen in decades. And at the same time, our federal immigration policy is directed at forcing renters out of the country.
Yes.
So the federal government currently is trying to get the share of non-permanent residents, and Stats Canada just had a great report about non-permanent residents and housing. Turns out about 99% of non-permanent residents are renters.
Hmm.
They're students, they're temporary foreign workers. We're trying to get the share of of that population down from like 8% of Canadian population to like 5%, which means about a 900,000 person outflow. And that's 900,000 renters essentially, or I can divide that because there's families, but leaving the country.
Oh my!
So right,
Listen, Brendon, we got to take a last break
yeah,
here. It's just getting really interesting. Need to take a break here, folks. We'll be back in just a moment. Thanks for coming back. You're listening to the Whole Home Show, and I'm Tony Joe. We are chatting with the chief economist of the British Columbia Real Estate Association, Brendon Ogmundson. Again, Brendon, thanks for joining us today.
you bet.
I'm sorry, I had to cut you off there for our break there, but we were going deep into this whole conversation about tenants, more inventory with purpose-built rentals, and the Canadian policies about immigrant workforce. Let's just step back a moment. You said about 900,000 people.
Yeah, that's I think the target, and we probably didn't come close to hitting the half of that. We're supposed to be about 950. I think it's 900 or 950,000 people over 2 years.
Yeah.
We didn't get close in year one, so that means we got to do even more, I guess, in the
It-
next year, or maybe spill into 2027. But what it means is, yeah, it's close to a million people. So different households, maybe it's half a million households or something, that are renters and are going to be forced to leave the country. So
yeah.
rental demand obviously takes a pretty big hit, especially in places like Victoria that has big international student population.
Yeah.
Same with Vancouver, and markets like Victoria and Vancouver that have a lot of investor demand. That
Yeah.
a lot of that is going to take a real hit. So we're completing all of those purpose-built rental units. We're shipping renters out of the country. I don't think that this is the peak for vacancy rates. I think we're going to keep seeing them rise for the next couple of years just from those simple dynamics.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And then there's some more conversation about this as well too, as far as the labor force. And I have to say, I was chatting with the owner of a big box shop here in Victoria, who I happen to know, and he was saying he was 500 labor hours short over Christmas time, 12 full-time staffers. And it's because all of his, so much of his labor force was the immigrant workers who were
Right.
great employees. But this is a very interesting time. Very interesting time.
Yeah, I think it feeds into some of the slowdown in, especially in the lower mainland and maybe a bit in Victoria. If there aren't investors, and if investors are looking ahead and prices aren't really moving and rents are falling and it's gonna be harder to find, like if you're going to invest in a single family home and put in a basement suite, are you going to make that decision if you can't fill the basement suite or you can
Yeah.
only fill it with a much reduced rent? Like, I think that's a big part of why we're seeing things not really pick up in larger markets that have a lot of investor buyers. Investors have just completely, fled those markets, and they're
Mhm.
typically about 20% of demand, right? So without those investors, it's going to be really difficult to see sales pick up back to normal levels.
Well, there's the other thing that comes up every once in a while, letters to the editor or whatever,
Sure.
talking about how, in fact, there was one just, I think it was yesterday, where a letter said, "Why would anyone want to be a landlord with the tenancy regulations changing as well too, and all that?"
Right. Well,
Yeah,
it's all the things, right? Like there's the number of taxes you have to pay to be an investor in the first place. I mean, and the restrictions on what you can do with it. You can't obviously use short-term rental in a lot of markets anymore. Yeah, and then if you have a long-term tenant, it's not fun to be a landlord, and all of the rules are really kind of stacked against you. Even if you have a tenant that, doesn't pay rent for several months, it's really difficult to get rid of those tenants. So,
hmm
no surprise that if the returns aren't there and it's a massive headache,
yeah.
why would you want to be an investor right now?
Yeah, so what I got from you a moment ago was the comment, yes, there could be further increases in the vacancy rates here. And I get it too, because a lot of these newly constructed purpose-built rentals were created before the regulations changed. So there was
Yeah,
this, I guess there was this general hope that, oh, we're going to fill all these up with
yeah.
students and, migrant workers and, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And
it's a lot of, like, on the demand side, you've got immigration policy, but then also on the supply side, because it's all of the how difficult it is to get a condo project to pencil out.
yeah,
The only thing that makes sense for the past few years is to build purpose-built rentals. So even you had projects that started as condo projects,
yes.
couldn't hit their pre-sale marks and had to pivot to purpose-built rental. So we've
Mhm.
had even more supply than I think was originally planned on the rental side.
Yeah. The other thing too, I haven't seen the stats, but I saw a quote about net migration. Was it the first time in years that we had more going
So
out than coming in?
Yeah, well, so like international, besides outside the pandemic, which was weird, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had negative international migration for the first time in I don't know ever or decades. I have to look at the charts, but certainly we had it during the pandemic. But outside of the pandemic, yeah, it's very unusual for BC, which generally we get about 40,000 or so, I think, net migration internationally per year.
Yeah.
To have it go negative for a year, and again, if we take the government at their word, it's going to be even more negative in 2026,
Mm.
which is a big headwind, right? Like not just for like the things like the rental market, but like temporary foreign workers and international students buy stuff here too. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
they pay sales taxes and everything else and income taxes, and they buy groceries, and they go to the movies and everything else, all that consumer spending. You're also shipping out of the country.
Yeah. Okay. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about Bill 44. So, of course, the provincial government a little while ago enacted this whole density program where, of course, uh, there basically any residential house can be turned into a 4 or 6 unit
Yeah.
dwelling. How has that affected things so far?
I don't know what the uptake is. I mean, a lot of the municipalities still are fighting back against, they're essentially
Oak Bay is a classic
Oak Bay is
example
the
here.
always always
Yes.
always one of the number one. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's still a fight, right? And it's you could like, you can see arguments on both sides. Like, does it make sense for Oak Bay or West Vancouver to massively densify? Like, some of the rules maybe don't make sense everywhere. I remember I was giving a presentation, I think it was in Vernon, and even like one of the, it's part of Bill C-44, maybe it's a different part of the kind of density stuff, and the upzoning, but there was a building there, I think it was going to be built without parking. Because you didn't need, so for a certain size of building, you don't necessarily need parking, but it's also in Vernon. And it's just like, well, without parking, like without a car, there's not really a lot you can do in Vernon. So like, it's not, no, it doesn't always make sense, right? It's an hour to Kelowna.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, it's some of the rules don't always make sense. A lot of the like uptake, I'm not sure is there. We saw this in Victoria, I think. Did Victoria roll out like a missing middle initiative, but
Yes.
like there was
Yeah.
no uptake because it's too expensive. Like
Yeah.
the cost of buying a single family home, and then putting 4 units on it, it just didn't make sense. Like you need to have way more density in a lot of these places to make those projects make any sense at all. So
Well, it's an interesting time right now, I'm going to say, because I can think off the top of my head of probably 6 or 7 developments, including 3 around my house here right now. I do live in Oak Bay,
yeah,
and there are 3 developments where it was a single family lot, and they are building 4 unit townhouse developments,
yeah,
and they're all for sale. But what is yet to be seen is what the market says about these units, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I think this year, well, I shouldn't say I think, I know this year is going to be pivotal because
Yeah.
it's going to tell us about what consumer demand on these.
Yeah, and I mean I think a lot of it does make sense. I mean we probably can use land a lot better than it's currently being used. But yeah, it's really about the demand side though. Like, is there demand for these units? What's the price point going to be? And yeah, and those sorts of things. So we'll see. I think we obviously need a lot more density. We need a lot more upzoning. Whether or not we can actually get there is kind of an open question, considering how expensive it is to actually deliver housing in the province.
For sure. All right. Well, for our last couple of minutes here, we do need to talk about the global economy stuff
Sure.
and what it's going to look like this year here with all of the stuff going on. We get Venezuela in the news for the past week. Continued uncertainty. About things. So what, what's it feeling like?
Yeah, I think unfortunately we're gonna have a third straight year in BC of slow economic growth. So this in 2025, the economy probably grew about 1.5%, grew 1.2% in 2024. I think we're on track for similar growth, 1 to 1.5% in 2026. That was the consensus when I was at Economic Forecast Council, and the consensus was around 1.5%. a lot of that is just the lingering uncertainty is really going to keep businesses from investing, keep businesses from hiring. That uncertainty is fading, and we might get some good news as early as tomorrow from the Supreme Court ruling on at least part of the Trump administration's tariffs.
Yes.
Not the ones that apply to Canada, unfortunately, but if he loses kind of unilateral ability to levy a tariff, that takes away some leverage when we eventually renegotiate CUSMA later this year, our free trade agreement with the United States. If
Yep.
he can't just say, I'm walking away from the table unless you accept a 15% tariff or something, then that takes away some leverage, hopefully. I'm hoping the back half of 2026, we got CUSMA renegotiations underway. I won't be talking about tariffs, hopefully.
Hmm.
Nearly, no, I'm not going to be talking about as much in 2026 as I did in 2025, but
Yeah.
maybe I can get away without saying it all after like, the summer or something. So I'm hopeful. But it's still going to be, there's just a lot of other headwinds, kind of a weak labor market. Construction sector is going to slow because there is so much standing inventory. We are at 30-year highs for unsold new inventory of homes.
Oh,
Builders don't build if they can't sell what's already on the market.
yeah.
So we're going to see residential construction slow. On the plus side, LNG should pick up in the second half of the year. The LNG Canada is going to ramp up exports to Asia. That'll help on the trade side and diversify our trade a bit, but more headwinds than tailwinds in 2026.
All right. What I'm getting from what you're saying is it could be a lot worse.
There you go. It could always be worse, Tony.
Right. Yeah. But it is interesting, because when you talk about inflation and interest rates and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's been an interesting time. I've mentioned to many people before, people in our industry. It just seems like it's been a couple of years where this is always in the news. Like,
Yeah.
people are concerned. Like these are areas of concern. But at the
That's
end,
why I did 80 speaking engagements last year.
yeah,
People want to know. People want to know. Yeah, it
they
was busy.
they sure do. They sure do. Well, thanks for joining us again. It's Brendon Ogmundson from the British Columbia Real Estate Association. He is the chief economist. Brendon, thanks again for joining us today.
Anytime you need me, I'm here.
And folks, by the way, as a reminder, we have our webinar coming up. All you got to do is visit our website, cfax1070.com. Look under shows. We're us, the whole home show with Tony Joe. We are there. There's a link to a registration, or you can go to Eventbrite. Look up January 31st here in Victoria, and you'll find us. We are speaking with members of the whole home show here. We had a couple of episodes recently, and next week we'll be speaking with more. So we look forward to hearing or seeing you guys this time next week. See you then.